What's going on, everyone, and welcome into Plaisance Podcast, filled to the brim with glitchy analysis and freezing cold takes, so cold that they're boiling hot. In this episode, we are continuing our college football playoff series. We are so close to the start of the year. We're going to be talking about the Kansas Jayhawks today. Let's get right into the stars. At quarterback, Jalon Daniels. Now, we haven't really heard a ton from this guy over the last couple of years in terms of play on the field. He's been dealing with some injuries, but man, to me, this is one of the best quarterbacks in college football. He is a guy that you're going to have to look out for when it comes to dark horse Heisman contenders. Jalon Daniels, he'll be lighting up scoreboards all over the country. Devin Neal, running back, to pair with him in the backfield. This guy is one of the best backs in the Big 12. I definitely think he's a 1,000-yard rusher. He was last year. We're going to see some more success from this run game. This dynamic duo is going to take over this schedule they've got here. On the defensive side of the ball, one of the best corners in all of college football. Probably a second, maybe third round pick this upcoming draft. Kobe Bryant, lockdown corner, really talented, can really play man-to-man extremely well, and I definitely don't think that he's incapable of helping out in the run game, getting to the quarterback, but when it comes to just actually defending the pass, this is one of the best guys to do it in the game right now. Those are the stars for the team. Let's go ahead and talk about a couple of storylines. Let's look at what Kansas lost versus what they gained, and then, of course, we'll get into our record prediction. First storyline, Lance Leipold is one of the golden boys of college football. When you think about, where you want your coach to come from, you want him to come from the gutter, the grind, okay? And this is the guy to do it. A 6-time Division III national championship winner, goes to Buffalo, gets to 2 conference championships, and now he comes to Kansas, and the lights are on. This is one of my favorite coaches in all of college football, not just because he's an underdog and a grinder, but because he wins football games. Kansas 9-4 last year, absolutely unheard of, and there's more to come where that was at just this last season. I definitely am a big fan. This is a guy that's going to be getting some major head coaching offers this next season, and it's well deserved. All right, now let's go ahead and talk about the key losses and additions for this team. The losses side of things, Dominic Pooney, offensive guard for them last year, he gets drafted. I definitely think that impacts the run game just a little bit. Not really much of a pass protector, more of a dominant running or rush guard, I guess. I don't know how you would phrase that, but I think you get what I'm saying. This guy was really important to Kansas's run game, and he gets drafted. On the addition side of things, not too much. Nothing terribly significant. Just a couple of transfers that are projected to start, but I wouldn't talk about this Kansas State team as like a revolutionized team. They're pretty much the same team from last year, and I think that's important because my next storyline is there's a lot of continuity and chemistry that needs to be built with Jalon Daniels. Now, last season, he got a couple of games in where he was the bona fide starter and healthy, and he absolutely lit it up, and I definitely think that that's where we expect him to be throughout the year. What we need to see more of is more than 4 games in a row where this guy is healthy. Like, for example, the bowl game that Kansas had 2 years ago versus Arkansas. Jalon Daniels had 500-yard passing and 5 touchdowns. An absolutely electric performance. Now, Kansas did fall short, but I think that Jalon Daniels is a top 10 quarterback in all of college football. I don't see a lot to debate here other than the fact that he hasn't been healthy. So Jalon Daniels has to build chemistry and continuity with this team that has returned the majority of its starters, and I think it'll be easier, especially as the season goes on. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is the downfall of this Kansas team, and that's the fact that their front seven is pretty weak. Last year, they were pretty below average, especially among Power 4 teams, stopping the run and stopping the pass. Now, if you look at their Big 4 games last year versus Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Kansas State, Texas, they went 1-3 in those games. And to me, it's because they allowed 34 points a game, tons of yards on the ground. And the thing what I was saying about the key additions, the fact that there are none, this Kansas team did not really get better on the defensive side of the football. And now, of course, they have some really talented corners, but on the D-line and in the linebacker unit, I didn't see a lot of improvement, and I don't really see a ton from last season. So unless Lance Leipold can really turn this team around, I think that'll be the downfall, especially trying to stop the run. Now, let's go ahead and get into our great record prediction. The bonus side for Kansas is that this schedule is pretty weak in terms of really tough games. I think that's a positive. So we'll go ahead and talk about the first 3 games. Home versus Lindenwood, at Illinois versus UNLV. Illinois, I think, is a rebuilding program. I do not think that they're ready to contend. They're pretty much like a 5-7, 6-6 team to me. So even though it's on the road and Illinois might be a harder place to play, I will give Kansas the benefit of the doubt just because I am such a big fan of this offense. So I'll give them the win there. UNLV and Lindenwood at home. Those are both easy W's, I think. At West Virginia, to me, that is the second toughest game of this schedule. I'm going to give Kansas the loss there. Morgantown is a really tough place to play, and although West Virginia is recovering from new coach after new coach, I definitely think that they can pull off the upset here. Then home versus TCU, at Arizona State, home versus Houston. I will give the home field advantage to Kansas over TCU. That's going to be the major factor, as well as the quarterback differential here. So win there versus TCU. At Arizona State, Arizona State is pretty much in shambles and has been over the last couple of seasons. So once again, I will give Kansas the win over a team that is nowhere near contention. And the same thing goes for Houston. So those are 3 wins in a row. You are 6-1 going into your best rivalry game of the year at Kansas State. This is the hinge game. There are college football playoff and Big 12 championship what's the word? Odds on the, or not odds, you know what I'm trying to say. There are implications. That's the word. There are Big 12 championship and college football playoff implications on the line here for this game. And the fact that it's at Kansas State, I'm going to give the edge to Kansas State, and I will give Kansas the loss here. I don't think that this front seven is ready for DJ Giddens. I think he's going to have an absolute field day on this Kansas defense. Kansas State gets the win at home. Now you are 6-2, closing out the season, hosting Iowa State, at BYU, hosting Colorado, at Baylor. Now, at BYU, at Baylor, while I think those could be tougher games, I definitely still see Kansas winning. I will give the offensive benefit of the doubt to Kansas almost every single time that we look at a team on their schedule. So both of those are wins. And then hosting Iowa State and hosting Colorado, those to me come down to home field advantage. I think that Colorado and Iowa State are pretty much on par with this Kansas offense. I really like both of the quarterbacks there in Shedeur Sanders and Rocco Beck. But home field advantage and the better coach. Lance Leipold is probably the best or second best coach in the Big 12. So Kansas finishes the season 10-2. Their hinge game, of course, at Kansas State. There's an upset in Morgantown, but there are going to be big questions for where this team is going next year. You're going to be losing your starting quarterback, losing a couple of really key guys like Kobe Bryant, like Devin Neal. So where does this Kansas team go next? It's going to depend on whether or not their head coach sticks around. So that's going to be all for our Kansas preview. Thank you guys all so much for tuning in. We're going to be talking about UCF next episode, so be sure to tune into that, and we'll see you next time.